I should have known something was wrong the moment my son called me Dad instead of his usual hey. 3 years of barely hearing from him, and suddenly he wanted to take me to lunch. Just the two of us. To talk. I'm 67 years old. I spent 40 years teaching high school mathematics before I retired. I can still calculate compound interest in my head and spot a pattern in data before most people finish reading the numbers. But apparently, I couldn't see what was right in front of me when it came to my own son. Michael had always been difficult. Even as a kid, he had this way of calculating every interaction, every relationship, like it was a transaction. My wife Ellen used to say he got his analytical mind from me, but she worried he didn't get her heart. I'd laugh it off back then. Now, 3 years after losing her to cancer, I wasn't laughing at anything. The restaurant he picked was expensive. Not the chain steakhouse we used to go to for birthdays, but one of those places downtown where they don't list prices on the menu and the waiter describes each dish like he's narrating a documentary. Michael was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Dad. He stood up, smiled, even pulled out my chair. Thanks for coming. I know it's been a while. 5 months, I said, sitting down. Christmas dinner. You left early because Diane had a headache. Something flickered across his face, but the smile stayed in place. Yeah, well, things have been crazy. You know how it is. I didn't, actually. I'd been retired for 4 years. My days consisted of reading, maintaining Ellen's garden, and occasionally tutoring students at the library. I wasn't closing million-dollar deals like Michael, who'd made a name for himself in commercial real estate. He was the top agent at his firm, according to the annual Christmas card Diane sent. We made small talk through appetizers. He asked about my health, the house, whether I was keeping up with yard work. I asked about my grandchildren, and he showed me pictures on his phone. Emma was 12 now, looking more like Ellen every day. Jack was 9, all knees and elbows like Michael had been at that age. I barely see them anymore, I said, handing back his phone. You're always so busy. I know. I'm sorry. He leaned forward, and his expression shifted into something more serious. Actually, that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about. The kids and, well, the future. My stomach tightened. The future. That's what people said when they wanted to talk about death, about wills, about who gets what when you're gone. I'm healthy, Michael. Doctor says I've got the blood pressure of a man 20 years younger. I know, Dad, I know. But Mom didn't even make it to 65, and he paused, looked down at his hands. Look, I'm not trying to be morbid. I just think it's important to have things in order. For everyone's peace of mind. The waiter brought our entrees. I'd ordered the salmon without looking at it, barely tasting it now. Michael cut into his steak with precise movements, like he was dissecting something in a lab. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked. Just that we should review Mom's estate planning. Make sure everything's updated. There have been some significant tax law changes in the last few years, and I'd hate for you to lose a big chunk to the IRS unnecessarily. He said it so smoothly, so reasonably. Of course, he would know about tax laws. He dealt with property transactions every day. I have a will, I said. Ellen and I did them together 15 years ago. Exactly. 15 years? Things change, Dad. Estate tax exemptions, trust structures, the value of the house. When was the last time you had the property appraised? I hadn't. Ellen and I bought the house 43 years ago for $42,000. It was on 3 acres with a small lake, about 30 minutes outside the city. Back then, it was just country property. Now, the city had sprawled out to meet us, and houses in our area were selling for numbers that made my head spin. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe it's worth $500,000? Michael's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Dad, houses on your street sold for 1.2 last year, and you've got the lake access. You're sitting on at least 1.5, probably closer to 2 million. I stared at him. $2 million. The house where I taught my son to ride a bike in the driveway, where Ellen planted rose bushes every spring, where we hosted countless barbecues and birthday parties. I couldn't conceive of it as $2 million. It was just home. So what? I said. I'm not selling it. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you need to protect it. For the kids. For Emma and Jack. Do you know what happens if you die without proper estate planning? They could lose 40% to taxes. Maybe more. The way he said they made something cold settle in my chest. Not I would lose, or the family would lose. They, the grandchildren. Like he was thinking about them, not himself. I have an appointment with my estate attorney on Thursday, he continued, pulling out his phone. Why don't you come with me? Just to get a professional opinion. No obligation. We'll review the will. Maybe set up a trust to protect the house for the grandkids. It's actually not complicated at all. Thursday? That's 2 days from now. I know it's short notice, but this is the only time Stuart had available for the next month. He's doing me a favor squeezing us in. Stuart Maxwell. He's one of the best estate attorneys in the state. Handles all our big commercial clients. I should have felt grateful. My successful son, taking time out of his busy schedule to help his aging father navigate complex legal matters, making appointments with top attorneys, buying me expensive lunches. Instead, I felt like I was being herded somewhere I didn't want to go. I don't know, Michael. I should probably talk to John first. John? John Breslin. He's been our family attorney for 30 years. He handled our house closing, our wills, everything. Michael's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Dad, no offense to John, but estate tax law is incredibly specialized. You need someone who does this every day, not some general practice guy who probably hasn't updated his knowledge since the 90s. John's sharp as a tack. He sends me articles about new tax legislation. Great. Then he'll understand why you're getting a second opinion from a specialist. Michael's voice had an edge now, the same tone he used to use when I'd question his homework methods in high school. Impatient. Condescending. Look, just come to the appointment. If Stuart says everything's fine with your current setup, great. If not, wouldn't you want to know? I looked at my son across the table. When had he gotten so polished, so smooth? He'd always been smart, but this was different. This was practiced. Professional. The kind of persuasiveness that closed deals and convinced people to sign things. Okay, I heard myself say. Thursday. What time? 2 o'clock. I'll pick you up at 1:30. The office is downtown. He signaled for the check, which he paid with a black credit card I'd never seen before. Oh, and Dad, bring any documentation you have. The will, property deed, insurance policies, bank statements. Stuart will need to see everything to give you proper advice. We walked out to the parking lot together. Michael's car was a new BMW, silver and sleek. Mine was a 15-year-old Toyota that Ellen had bought used. Thanks for lunch, I said. Of course. And Dad? He put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed. I'm glad we're doing this. Mom would have wanted to know you were taken care of. I drove home with that comment echoing in my mind. Mom would have wanted to know you were taken care of. Not, I want to make sure you're taken care of. Not, I worry about you. But invoking Ellen, like she'd authorized this whole thing from beyond the grave. The house felt too quiet when I got back. It always did. 3 years, and I still expected to hear Ellen in the kitchen, or find her in the garden, or see her reading on the porch. Instead, there was just silence and dust motes floating in the afternoon sun. I went to the study, a small room off the living room where Ellen had handled all our paperwork. She was the organized one. I was good with numbers, but she was good with systems, with files and labels, and knowing exactly where everything was. After she died, I'd been afraid to touch anything, like disturbing her carefully maintained order would erase her completely. But Michael said to bring documentation, so I opened the filing cabinet and started pulling folders. Will and testament, property deed, insurance, bank statements. As I pulled out the folder marked will, something fell out from behind it. An envelope, yellowed with age, with Ellen's handwriting on it, for David, open, if Michael ever asks about the house. My hands started shaking. I sat down in Ellen's chair, the one she'd sat in thousands of times, and stared at the envelope. She'd written this. When? How long had it been there, tucked behind our will, waiting? I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, dated 6 months before she died. "My dearest David," it began, and I could hear her voice in every word. "If you're reading this, it means Michael has approached you about the house. I don't know exactly how he'll frame it, but I know it's coming. He's been asking me about it for the last year, ever since we had the property appraised for insurance purposes. He's called it financial planning and protecting our assets and thinking about the future. But I know my son, and I know what he's really thinking about. Do you remember when Michael was 16 and wanted to borrow my grandmother's pearl necklace to give to his girlfriend? Not to let her wear it, to give it to her, permanently. I said no, and he argued for hours about how I was being sentimental about just jewelry, how the pearls would mean more to someone who was young and could actually wear them. He never understood that it wasn't about the value. It was about what my grandmother meant to me, about memory and love and things that can't be reduced to a dollar amount. He's 35 now, but he still thinks the same way. Everything has a price. Everything is an asset to be optimized. And I think he looks at our house, our home, and sees something that should belong to him, not because he loves it, but because it's valuable. David, I need you to know something. 2 years ago, we set up a trust with John Breslin. You were so overwhelmed with my cancer treatments that I handled it myself. The house, all of our financial assets, they're in an irrevocable trust for Emma and Jack. It can't be sold or transferred. When you die, it goes directly to the grandchildren when they turn 25, not to Michael. I did this because I know he would sell it within a year, pocket the money, and our grandchildren would never know the place where their grandmother planted gardens and their grandfather taught them to fish. I've put John's contact information at the bottom of this letter. Call him before you go to any appointment Michael has arranged. Ask John about the trust. Ask him about something called a quitclaim deed. That's what I'm afraid Michael will try to get you to sign, making it sound like a simple estate planning document. It's not. It would transfer ownership of the property even though the trust is meant to prevent that. I love our son. God knows I love him. But love isn't the same as trust, and trust isn't the same as foolishness. I've left instructions with John to handle everything. You don't need to update anything. You don't need to sign anything. You just need to keep living in our house, keeping my garden, and being there for Emma and Jack when they need you. I'm so sorry to burden you with this. I'm sorry I won't be there to handle it myself. But I know you, my brilliant mathematician, my careful thinker. You'll see through whatever Michael tries to do. You'll know what's right. All my love, always, Ellen. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat there in the fading afternoon light, holding the paper, feeling the weight of what Ellen had known, what she'd planned for, what she'd tried to protect me from. She'd known, 3 years ago, while fighting cancer, worrying about treatments and time and saying goodbye, she'd also been worrying about this, about Michael, about what would happen when she wasn't there to say no. I looked at the phone number she'd written for John Breslin. It was after 5, but John had always told us to call anytime. I dialed. Breslin Law Office. John, it's David Porter. David, how are you? I've been meaning to call you. How's that garden of Ellen's doing? It's good. Listen, John, I need to talk to you about something. Michael wants to take me to see an estate attorney on Thursday. There was a pause. What kind of estate attorney? Guy named Stuart Maxwell. Michael says, we need to update my will, something about tax law changes. Another pause. Longer this time. David, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you remember Ellen setting up a trust about 2 years before she passed? I just found her letter about it 5 minutes ago. Oh, thank God. John's relief was palpable. Then you know. David, you don't need to update anything. The trust is ironclad. But if Michael is taking you to Stuart Maxwell, I know Stuart. He's a real estate attorney, not an estate attorney. He handles property transactions for Michael's firm. The cold feeling in my chest expanded, spreading to my limbs. What would he want me to sign? I don't know for certain, but my guess would be a quitclaim deed disguised as an estate planning document, maybe buried in a packet of papers. Something that would transfer ownership of the house to Michael, supposedly for tax purposes or to protect the property or some other plausible sounding reason. Once you sign it, the house is his. The trust wouldn't matter because you'd have voluntarily transferred it. Can he do that? Is it legal? It's legal if you sign it willingly. That's why it would be disguised as something else. David, you cannot go to that appointment. And if you do, you cannot sign anything without me reviewing it first. But Michael is my son. I know. And Ellen loved him too. But she also knew him. That's why she did what she did. I thanked John and hung up. Then I sat there as the room grew dark, thinking about my son. About the little boy who'd loved to build things with blocks, who'd struggled with reading but excelled at math, who'd cried at Ellen's funeral with his face pressed against my shoulder. That boy was gone. Or maybe he'd never been who I thought he was. Thursday morning, Michael called to confirm. Still on for this afternoon, Dad? 1:30? Actually, Michael, I need to cancel. Silence. Then, cancel? Why? I talked to John Breslin. He says my estate is already properly structured. I don't need to update anything. John Breslin is a dinosaur, Dad. He's been Ellen's attorney for 30 years. Mine too. Fine. Michael's voice had gone flat. So you'd rather trust some old man than your own son who actually knows the current market? I'd rather trust the attorney who helped Ellen set up a trust specifically to protect the house for Emma and Jack. The silence that followed was different, heavy, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. She told you about that. Not a question. An accusation. She left me a letter. Of course she did. Michael laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom never trusted me with anything important. Did she tell you that? She set up that trust without even consulting me. Like I was some kind of criminal who'd steal from my own family. She set it up because she wanted the kids to have it. Not because... Bullshit, Dad. She did it because she always thought I wasn't good enough. Nothing I ever did was good enough for her. Straight A's? You could have tried harder. 6-figure salary? You should spend more time with family. Buy a nice house? We lived in a shack and turned out fine. Meanwhile, that house you're sitting in is worth $2 million, and you're barely keeping up with the property taxes on a pension. So that's what this is about? You think I should sell it? I think you should be practical. You're 67 years old, living alone in a house that's too big for you, struggling to maintain 3 acres and a lake. What's going to happen in 5 years when you can't mow the lawn anymore? 10 years when you need assisted living? You think your pension and Social Security will cover that? He wasn't wrong about the practical concerns. I was getting older. The house was big. The lawn was hard work. But that wasn't what this was about. Emma and Jack will be 25 in 13 and 16 years, I said quietly. I can hold on that long. For what? So they can inherit a house they'll probably just sell anyway? They don't have any attachment to it. They barely remember visiting Grandma there. That's because you stopped bringing them. We've been busy. Too busy for Sunday dinners? Too busy for birthdays? Emma's turning 13 next month. When's the last time you brought her to see me? Don't turn this into some guilt trip about... I'm not. I'm just saying the kids don't remember the house because you haven't let them make memories there. Maybe if you had, you'd understand why Ellen wanted them to have it. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Mom manipulated you, just like she manipulated everything else. She made sure I could never have what should have been mine. And now you're going along with it like some obedient. Michael. I cut him off, my teacher voice coming back after years of retirement. Firm. Final. I'm not signing anything. The trust stands. The house goes to Emma and Jack when they're old enough. That's Ellen's wish. And it's my wish too. Fine. Great. Enjoy your $2 million house all by yourself, Dad. I hope it keeps you warm at night. He hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to the silence of the empty house. Ellen's house. Our house. Emma and Jack's house. Someday. The next few months were hard. Michael didn't call, didn't return my calls. I sent birthday cards to Emma and Jack, but I didn't know if they received them. Diane, his wife, had always been quiet, always deferred to Michael. She wasn't going to go against him now. I kept up the house, mowed the lawn, even though it took me 2 days now instead of 1, maintained Ellen's garden, planting the same spring bulbs she'd loved, I had the dock repaired where it had rotted, spending money I probably shouldn't have. But I remembered Ellen's letter, Emma and Jack. When they were old enough, they'd have this place. They'd sit on that dock and maybe remember their grandmother, even if they'd barely known her. In October, John Breslin called. David, I need to tell you something. Michael tried to file a claim that you're mentally incompetent and unable to manage the estate. My hands went numb. What? It was thrown out. He had no evidence, no medical documentation, nothing. But I wanted you to know, he's not giving up. What can he do? Legally? Nothing. The trust is solid, but he could make your life difficult, contest bills, question your decisions. He could try to get a guardian appointed. Can he do that? Not easily, but he can try. And even trying costs money and time and stress. David, you might want to consider documenting everything. Your daily activities, your finances, your health, just in case. So I did. I started keeping a journal, writing down what I did each day. Balanced my checkbook to the penny. Kept every receipt. Went to the doctor for checkups and kept all the records showing I was healthy, competent, able to make my own decisions. It felt paranoid. It felt sad. It felt like something I never thought I'd have to do because of my own son. But Ellen had known. Somehow, she'd known. In December, a year after that lunch, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Diane standing there, Emma and Jack beside her. Emma was taller than I remembered, her face set in that adolescent mixture of uncertainty and defiance. Jack looked scared. Hi, David, Diane said quietly. She never called me Dad, even after 20 years of marriage to Michael. Always David, polite and distant. Diane, kids, this is a surprise. Can we come in? I stepped aside, and they filed into the living room. Emma and Jack sat on the couch, looking around like they were in a stranger's house, which, I supposed, they were. How many times had they been here? 5? 10? Not nearly enough. Diane stayed standing. I need to talk to you. About Michael. About everything. Okay. He doesn't know I'm here. He'd be furious if he knew. But She glanced at the kids, then back at me. I can't do this anymore. The lying. The schemes. David, you were right about the attorney appointment. Stuart Maxwell had papers ready to transfer the house. Michael showed them to me afterward, angry that you'd figured it out. He'd planned the whole thing for months. Why are you telling me this? Because it's not stopping. He's obsessed with this house. He talks about it constantly, about how much it's worth, what we could do with that money. He's started taking out loans against our own house, making investments that... She shook her head. We're in trouble, financial trouble, and he thinks if he can just get this property, it will solve everything. Emma was watching her mother with wide eyes. This wasn't what she'd expected to hear today. He had me call elderly services last month, Diane continued, to report concerns about your welfare. They came out, didn't they? I nodded. A social worker had visited, asked questions, looked around the house. She'd concluded I was fine and closed the case within a week. I'm sorry. I was in the car when I made the call. I felt sick doing it. But Michael said it was for your own good, that you needed help, whether you admitted it or not. She wiped her eyes. I can't be part of this anymore. Emma asked why we never visit Grandpa, and I realized I don't have a good answer. We never visit because Michael won't let us, because he's so angry about a house that isn't even his. Mom, Emma said quietly, we don't have to do this. Yes, we do. Diane looked at her daughter, then at me. Emma and Jack should know their grandfather. They should have memories of this place before they inherit it. And I think I need to separate from Michael. I don't know if it's divorce or just space, but I need to not be around this anymore. She didn't stay long. But before she left, she asked if the kids could come visit sometimes. Weekends, maybe. School breaks. Just them, without Michael. Anytime, I said. This will be their house someday. They should know it. After they left, I sat in the living room for a long time. Emma had lingered in the doorway, looking at the photos on the mantel. That's Grandma? She'd asked. pointing to Ellen's picture. That's her. You look like her. Dad never talks about her. Maybe you can ask me about her instead. I have lots of stories. She'd smiled, uncertain but hoping. It was the same expression Ellen used to have when she was planning something optimistic, something that might not work but was worth trying anyway. Now, months later, the kids come every other weekend. Jack is teaching himself to fish off the dock, using the same rod I taught Michael with 40 years ago. Emma helps me in the garden, and I tell her about Ellen, about which plants were her favorites and why. Michael still doesn't speak to me. John says he's stopped trying to challenge the trust, but I don't know if he's given up or just changed tactics. Maybe someday he'll come around. Maybe he won't. But Emma asked me last week if I'd teach her to drive when she turns 15. Jack wants to know if he can bring friends to fish next summer. Diane has filed for separation and seems lighter somehow, less burdened. And I'm 68 years old, living in a house worth $2 million that I still think of as the place where Ellen planted rose bushes and made Sunday dinners and loved her family the best she could. I still keep her garden. When I plant bulbs or prune roses, I talk to her sometimes, tell her about the kids, about how they're growing, about how she was right. She usually is. The house is quiet now, in the late afternoon. In a few hours, Emma and Jack will arrive for the weekend. Emma wants to learn to bake using Ellen's recipes. Jack wants to sleep in the tent by the lake if it's not too cold. I look at Ellen's letter sometimes, the one she left me 3 years ago. The paper is getting worn at the creases from handling, but her words are still clear. Love isn't the same as trust, and trust isn't the same as foolishness. She knew what was coming. She prepared for it. And because she did, I have my grandchildren back. I have weekends filled with laughter and questions, and the kind of chaos a house needs to feel like a home. Michael made his choice. He chose money over family, property over people, transaction over relationship. Maybe someday he'll realize what he lost. Maybe he won't. But Emma and Jack will have this place. They'll have the lake and the garden and the memories we're making now. They'll have what Ellen wanted them to have. Not just property, but a home, a history, a foundation. And maybe that's what inheritance really is. Not the things we leave behind, but the values we plant in the hearts of those who'll remember us. I hear a car in the driveway. The kids are early. Jack bursts through the door first, already talking about the new lure he wants to try. Ellen was right about everything. But most of all, she was right about this. Some things can't be reduced to a dollar amount. Some things are just worth protecting.